example, might issue a visa if you could prove self-employment or supply a letter from your employer. Barbados offered a welcome if you could prove an annual income of at least $50,000. Estonia also rolled out the pandemic welcome mat, launching a digital nomad visa that allowed foreigners to live in the country for a year. Given that the cost of living is 30% less in Estonia than it is in the States, it was understandably attractive to those who were able to make a go of it. High-income families, as well as those with jobs in tech, finance, insurance, and some cultural industries, those in media, publishing, and other creative professions, barring any who needed live shows or rehearsal space to make a living, were mostly able to work at home, while low-wage and non-unionized workers and employees in service industries, restaurants, retail, faced job loss or, if they were lucky, continued in essential jobs, putting themselves at risk doing the work the rest of us needed. Some delivered groceries to people's doorsteps, people who then wiped down their deliveries with disinfectant before bringing them into their homes. Those with children had different challenges. Parents who had jobs where they could work remotely tried to do so with their kids struggling to attend class via a computer screen, or make it through school holidays with no activities such as day camps and little to no childcare available. As difficult as this was, it was easier for those who could afford an internet connection and additional computers for their kids. Those of lesser economic means were often not so lucky. Lower-wage workers and their families were often living in cramped apartments without internet access or computers for everyone. Provincial and federal governments acted as quickly as possible to try and get them the resources they needed, providing Wi-Fi and devices so children could learn remotely, and, in some cases, providing income support so parents who lost their jobs wouldn't be left destitute. This did little to help, however. And often, parents whose work was deemed essential and could not be done remotely had to leave older siblings to look after the younger ones so that neither could focus on their remote studies. The long-term consequences of this have yet to be measured. The differences between those who had adequate resources and those who didn't quickly became apparent. In Toronto, for instance, statistics showed recent immigrants and people with low incomes were being hospitalized at 4 times the rate of everyone else, with the death rate twice as high. Crowded apartments, having to use public transit, working conditions that left people exposed to the virus, and not being able to afford to call in sick if they were feeling ill all led to increased rates of COVID-19 for less privileged groups. Toronto infectious disease expert Dr. Isaac Bogosh pointed to these social and economic inequalities as part of the problem, as well as highlighting outbreaks in prisons, food processing plants, work camps, and shelters as other areas for concern. He tried to focus our attention on the places and people that often exist beyond the focus of political attention. Infections were also spreading quickly among migrant workers. If there is a silver lining in this pandemic, Dr. Bogosh said, it's that this has highlighted some of the inequalities that we see and has highlighted many of the needs of marginalized populations. That silver lining is an invitation to talk about those inequalities and to try to do something about them. They were manifested in ways that measure economic class, income, housing, jobs, and educational opportunities. The pandemic had an early and profound effect on work and job losses. One study found that nearly half of the jobs lost in the Canadian labour market were in the bottom earnings quartile, which represented jobs in industries such as accommodation and food services, where workers were mostly younger, paid hourly, and weren't part of a union. Racialized workers also experienced deep unemployment. In a Canadian survey conducted between November and December 2020, the lowest unemployment rate was experienced by white Canadians at 7.4%. Black and Indigenous Canadians experienced an unemployment rate of nearly double, 13%,